I will tell you all about something horrible that happened to me 2 weeks ago. I couldn't keep it to myself any longer, so I decided to write it down in order to keep myself sane and remind myself that what happened was real. It all started one night. I received an unexpected visit from a friend. His face was pale and his body was shaking nonstop. In his right hand, he held a blue pendrive that he slowly brought to my face. "Take it," he whispered. Slightly unsettled, I obeyed, placing the pendrive in my pocket. Immediately after that, my friend put his hands on his face and started to cry silently. His crying got louder as time went on, to the point they turned into agonizing screams. I got horrified and attempted to ask him what was going on with him. He suffered for a few seconds on the ground, and then he stopped breathing. I yelled, calling anybody out for help, until my mother answered. I'd rather not remember the rest. The day of the funeral was one of the most disturbing ones that I have lived through. Watching his entire family mourn and cry for him made me feel horrible. The autopsy revealed the cause of death was an epilepsy attack, and they never asked me for my version of the story. Never knew why. When I arrived home, I enclosed myself in my room and started to cry, thinking about the moment of his death over and over again, until I remembered the pendrive. I rapidly looked at the basket of dirty clothes I had, looking through the pocket of the pair of pants I wore that day, and then I found the pendrive. At first, I doubted whether I should plug it in my PC, and to this day I regret having done so, but I eventually decided to see the contents of the pendrive. After having turned it on, I looked at its contents. It only contained one folder in a strange language I couldn't understand, and which I haven't been able to decipher to this day. It contained a file called sonicthehedgehog.exe. I noted that the game wasn't correctly written, but I didn't care too much about it at the moment. I tried to open the file, then an error message popped up, saying something about the file that I had tried to open not existing. I remembered the mistake in the file's name and corrected it, adding an E to the word hedgehog. It allowed me to open the file afterwards. I then remembered my friend was a big Sonic fan, which unsettled me a bit when realizing that fact, but I calmed down because of the fact that the file was about the friendly blue hedgehog. After opening the game, the screen faded to black, showing a text that read out "loading" with 3 dots that appeared and disappeared in a constant rhythm. "It's a game," I exclaimed, not being sure how to feel about this. I waited for the game to load, and it eventually showed a colorful 8-bit scenery with Sonic's emblem in front, with him wagging his finger like in the classic games, alongside the typical title screen music. For a moment, I thought this had nothing to do with the death of my friend, until I saw the smaller letters in the menu. In the portion of the screen dedicated to the Sega 1991 copyright credits, there was some text written in a seemingly exact same strange language of the folder. I felt chills go through me when I noticed. After that, I simply decided to press enter and move on. The level was the same one as the original version, Green Hill. I could use the arrow keys to move and the spacebar to jump. The characters' physics were normal, just as they were in the original game. It all went just fine until I made a mistake and got hit by an enemy. In the original game, the rings you collected would be spilled once you took damage. However, this time, instead of the rings being spilled all over the place, there were completely red squares coming out of Sonic. My optimistic mind thought it was just a bug, but deep down, I knew this wasn't a good sign. I kept going until I cleared the level, but when the act name was displayed on the screen, Instead of the typical Green Hill Act 2, there was a lot of garbled text written in the strange language I previously mentioned. The background was not normal this time. It was a plain, blood-red block that seemingly was slowly pulsating as time went on. I did get scared at that point. I tried to close out the game immediately with the escape button, but it wouldn't work, so I tried to press any buttons in desperation. Control, Alt, Super? None of them worked. As the screen distorted itself violently, my desperation grew. At some point, a really bright flash began rapidly flickering on the screen, and somehow it paralyzed me. I couldn't move or close my eyes. I could only watch the horrible things going on the screen. Excessively disturbing female screams started blasting on my speakers, while the screen displayed a close-up of Sonic's face, crying blood, as the words RIP started appearing everywhere around the screen. The screams didn't stop. In fact, they only got louder as time went on. I started to cry, still unable to move, and then started shaking. I will end up just like him, I thought. Horrified, the screen faded to black once again, and the screams stopped too. I desperately fought in an attempt to move, but all my efforts were in vain. On the screen, an enormous red number 10 showed up, which then changed to 9, 8, 7. I have to get out of there, I thought, still unable to move. 6, 5. With my biggest efforts, I was able to move a finger, then my head, my arms, and then my entire body. Once the countdown got to 2, I jumped at the ground, covering my head, as if I were in some sort of shootout. I heard a horrible female scream, similar to those that sound in those jump scare pranks that appear all around the internet, except this one was scarier and even worse. It was even more prolonged. I rapidly unplugged my PC's cable. Then I did the same with the pendrive and stomped it until it was torn into a million pieces, completely destroyed. The nightmare was over. I couldn't stop shaking after what happened. I eventually dried my tears and left the room. I never told anyone about it until now. Maybe I should just forget about it. Sometimes I believe I shouldn't expose my life out of mere curiosity. It's not worth it. However, if there's one thing I'm sure of, is that regardless of whatever happened at the end of that countdown, I don't ever want to know what it was.